Hello, and welcome to City Club. My name is Jill Bernstein, and I'm a new member of the City Club Board of Directors. Thank you. You know, this really is all about me, I think. But the mission of City Club is to inform, connect, and engage our community to strengthen the civic health of our region. We emphasize civil conversations and listening to others. Today, it is my honor and my privilege to open this meeting and then to moderate the forums for some of the candidates who will appear on the November ballot. This will be the first in a series of 3 monthly events, which will give you an opportunity to hear directly from the people who are asking to serve you in elected office and to learn more about the issues. We hope that you will attend all 3 forums. In September, our meeting will be at the normal time on the 4th Wednesday of the month. In October, we will be changing the meeting date to give you ample opportunity to hear about the ballot issues before the actual ballot drop. We will therefore be meeting on October 16th. So make a note, October, different date. September, same date. Today, we will be welcoming the candidates for the Washington House of Representatives in the 42nd District, the Washington State Supreme Court, and the Public Utilities District. But before we get started, let us begin by acknowledging with humility that the land where we are today is the territory of the people of the Salish Sea. Their presence is imbued in the waterways, shorelines, valleys, and mountains of their traditional homelands, and it has been this way since time immemorial. Also, before we get started, I would like to thank all of the volunteers who made our program possible. And also today, we are asking you to step forward and volunteer. On your tables, you will see a yellow sheet that looks like this. Please take a moment and read the ask. There are some really simple tasks that you could perform to help the programs run each month a little bit more smoothly. So please take a moment and sign up to be a part of our team. As you know, this is an all-volunteer organization, and we want you. We need you, and please say yes. If you know of others who couldn't attend today's program, please let them know that in about a week, they will be able to view this on our website. And also, I would ask you today to join me in thanking our sponsors for their support, and that includes Peace Health, St. Joe's Medical Center, Bruce and Claudia Deason, Danny Neal, real estate broker with the Mungia Group, the Firehouse Arts and Events Center, Culshan CPAs, the Opportunity Council, Pacific Continental Realty, Unity Care Northwest, Village Books, Western Washington University, the Salish Current, and a big thanks to our caterer, Good Bowls. Yeah, thank you. And for those of you who are not yet a member, I would like to encourage you to join. To do so is a show of your tangible support for our efforts to bring interesting and enlightening speakers every month. And this will allow you to receive $5 off the cost of attendance and lunch at our monthly meetings. Dues are $40 per person, $70 for a household of 2, and $10 for those under the age of 25. Joining is easy on our website, or fill out one of the blank application forms found on each table, and we will invoice you. Or go and see our treasurer, Zach Nordwell, at the door, and he can help you to complete the process. For planning purposes, we want to encourage you to buy your tickets early each month so that we can be sure to have enough food for lunch. And now, without further ado, let us begin. Today will be a little bit different because we're not going to be taking questions from the floor. I have asked the candidates who are able to please remain after today's forum so that you can approach them and ask your questions directly of them. Anything that we don't get to in the course of the structured forum. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to ask the questions that have been created by the programs committee. I'm going to be assisted by the timers, Amy and Chris. Thank you. Thank you. And they're going to try to keep everybody on track so that we have the time to hear from each of the candidates. One of them was sharing with me that there are very few opportunities for forums. In the past, sometimes many organizations were running election forums where you got to hear from the candidates and ask them your questions and hear about their reasons for service and how they feel about issues. But actually, today is going to be one of their few opportunities to speak directly to the community. We're grateful for the cooperation of the candidates for making time to be here today. And really, whether you plan to vote for candidate A or candidate B, I think you can agree with me that we appreciate them stepping forward and being ready to serve us. Service in these elected capacities really is not about glamour or money. It's really about the decision that they've made to serve us, and we all are grateful for that, I know. So I'm going to stop talking now and ask our candidates to come forward. We're going to start with the 42nd District, and hello, Alicia Rule, and hello, Raymond Pelletti. Thank you. And Mr. Pelletti and Ms. Rule, you'll see that right up front here, Chris and Amy have cards to tell you when you've got 15 seconds left on your answer. And then when Chris hits the stop, or when Amy hits the stop card, then we're going to ask you to stop. We don't have a cane to pull you off, but we'll think of something. So I'm going to try to remember to alternate asking these questions first. If I make a mistake, it's really, I'm going to ask you just to correct me. We'll try to keep this going, though. And so, Ms. Rule, let's start with you today. And would you please tell us what distinguishes you from your opponent?
Hi, good afternoon. It's such a pleasure to be with you today. I am Alicia Rule. I am a mother of 3 children, 5th generation in Whatcom County, and I had the pleasure of serving you as your state representative for 2 terms, 4 years, and it has been wonderful. We've had some big challenges, but we've hit them head on together, and I've appreciated your high level of engagement as we've moved through quite a few of those historic challenges. I am a business owner. I call myself the accidental business owner because I'm also a mental health professional. But as it turns out, that's quite a common experience. And I take that experience as a social worker, a mental health professional, and a business owner, and of course also a mother and former city council member, into Olympia when I represent you. I think that my primary role is to represent you, my district in Olympia, not me. It's about you. So thank you.
Well, the question, Mr. Pelletti, is what distinguishes you from your opponent?
The mic is muted.
You're green now.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here. I've been a Whatcom County resident since 1996, so 28 years. I'm a real estate broker and real estate appraiser, so I've seen a lot of the changes that go on in Whatcom County and throughout our state. I have a family of 3 kids, 11 grandkids, and I wanted to be involved in preserving the history of maintaining for our grandkids and our children all throughout the state. And so I was asked to step up and be part of this. I've been a member of the Realtor Association off and on for 20-some years. I'm past president of the Realtor Association, and therefore I'm pretty well involved in what goes on in our county. I'm here to represent you. I'm not in this with my ego. I think we have some things we need to fix, and that's why I'm here, and I appreciate you coming.
So we'll start with you, Mr. Pelletti, for a question about housing. And I'm going to ask each of the candidates to try really hard to be specific as you give your answers. There is universal recognition that we need to increase our housing stock, but regulations sometimes slow or prevent construction. What state efforts, if any, would you support to deal with this dynamic?
Well, the housing problem is ongoing. The number one detriment to the housing situation is the government. The permitting process is long-term. The permitting process is extremely expensive. Finding available lots that you can build on is difficult. The state last year put an overlay across the entire state and just said no more single-family lots, even if you live in Edgemore, because your lot now can maintain up to 6 units. And the state says, that's how we're going to fix this. Well, the problem is it doesn't fix it. It makes it more complicated. The housing problem is mainly twofold. One is supply, and that's materials and capital, and the other is labor. Labor costs have gone up substantially. Material costs are gone up. If you haven't noticed the news, Florida's getting hammered with hurricanes. California's got fires. And let me explain it this way. The lumber business knows where to send the material to get the highest prices, and they're going to go to those areas first before they come here. The way we fix this is we need to go back into our local communities and change how lots are developed, how builders have to go through the permitting process, and try to keep the cost down to build. The market drives value, and it's going to be tough to bring pricing down without making some tweaks at both the local level and the state level.
Thank you. And Ms. Rule?
Yes, we are in the midst of a housing crisis, and it's not hard to see that just by looking outside our doors. In any part of our community locally, you can see people who are struggling with homelessness. You can also not see people who are struggling with homelessness, because I just looked at the local report this morning, and what I saw is that we've had an increase in housing insecurity across the board, but we certainly saw an increase with folks who have small children. We know that a large percentage, actually, of students in our schools started school today, and on their first day of school, they don't have secure housing. So we know that we're at crisis level, not just for them, but also for seniors. And we know that the cost of living for those who are working, it just continues to rise. We also know that government can be of help. We do need to get those the regulation streamlined. There's no question about that. We made some actually pretty significant progress at a state level. We need to also, at the same time, put some local pressure on to do that as well. I did hear some misinformation. There's not a rule that says you can't build a single family home, but there is now more flexibility on what you can do on your lot. There's also something called the missing middle, which will allow for more building in particular areas, but especially we're going to see just a boom in Seattle. And what's helpful about that is it really takes some of the pressure off of here. I think it's important to know that I've worked very closely in this process, that we are not finished with partners like Colshan Community Land Trust, because home ownership is an equity issue, and that I have been endorsed by the realtors of the two of us here. And that's because we work together closely in order to be able to solve the crisis ahead of us. Whether it's for children, seniors, people who are working, we need to solve the housing crisis together. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll give you the opportunity to answer the next question first. Our Constitution requires a balanced budget. What strategies would you use to address the predicted shortfalls? And what about if the capital gains tax on very high income residents were eliminated by initiative? How would you address this additional shortfall? And to both candidates, please be as specific as you can be. Thank you.
Yes, one of the things that we continually need to do is ensure that the programs that we have are working. So we have built a lot of new programs that I'm interested in looking at outcomes I think we need to have a hyper-focus on outcomes so that we're using your tax dollars wisely. I also think that I see that we need to continually refocus on the things that our constitutional puts at the center. Constitutional efforts are put toward the center of where we need to be balancing our budget. I'm thinking particularly about public schools. So we have underfunded public schools, and we need to continue to work toward putting those at the center of our focus. Building our economy is crucial. I have been endorsed by both labor and business. That doesn't happen very often. But the reason that they're both willing to back me is because we work with everybody together to be able to bolster our economy, to be able to bolster those opportunities for everyone, for those good paying jobs, for labor, and for those who want to take the risk of becoming business owners like myself. We need to make the conditions as favorable as possible. We have work to do in order to make those opportunities available to all, and we need to continue to do work with whatever budget the people decide at the end of this next election cycle. So I'm really willing, ready, and prepared to do so, and looking forward to the work ahead.
And Mr. Pelletti.
Well, the capital gains tax is in its name. It's another tax. We tax everything we can find. There's tons of money. The problem is accountability. Where's the money going? We have money coming into the state from multiple sources, and every year we need more taxes. We need more taxes. Well, you're going to tax the people that make a profit on their businesses when they sell them. And even though it's a high-end tax, in this area there was 55 people taxed, I guess, last year, and there was over $2 million of their profits were taken. We need to go back and have accountability for where the money is spent. We tax on all levels. So the capital gains tax, in my opinion, needs to go away. We need to be more realistic in what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Thank you. And with each of the questions, your specificity will be appreciated by the audience. And Mr. Pelletti, this next question will be for you first. Washington ranks very low on access to mental health professionals, support staff, and treatment beds. What specific strategies will you champion to address these issues?
The problem is we, again, have a high amount of mental health professionals in the state. We seem to create more mental issues in the state than we can handle. We need to be able to say to our people, we need you to take responsibility at the local levels and help the people in our state.
And Ms. Rowe?
Yes, as a mental health professional in our community, I've been working at every single level to rapidly increase the number of mental health professions in our state. We have a shortage. We continue to have a shortage. And what that means for real people in our community is that when they or their children have a mental health crisis, which is at historic rates that we've never seen before, there's nowhere to go. They can't get in, and they can't use their insurance. I am fully dedicated to continuing to do this work. We are in the middle of rulemaking for a scope of practice expansion. What that allows is for a wide open lane to do multiple different avenues toward expanding education for people. It allows people that have not historically had access to higher education to be mental health professionals, and that when children and other adults come in for help, they can meet somebody who looks like them and understands their history. I will continue to do this work. We have to work with insurance companies, and we have to continue to put a pressure on these insurance companies because they're not paying at reimbursement rates that are even remotely what these folks are worth. And we have to look at working conditions for these mental health professionals. We continue to have to do some educational improvements. I was responsible for a very large study and program development at University of Washington about culturally competent care and mental health across the state, and that will likely be used nationwide. It's important for us to be able to meet people right where they're at, and I say that as a longtime, lifelong social worker that, I'm quoting the Code of Ethics for the National Association of Social Workers. That's how we do care. We meet people where they're at.
Thank you. And Ms. Rule, you'll have the first opportunity to answer this question. Washington State is not on track to meet our climate goals. What specific strategies, if any, do you support to get us to where we need to be, and how would you fund them?
Thank you for this question. One of the things I've had the pleasure of doing is working as our state's representative, both locally here to represent you in Olympia, but also representing Washington as a national leader in the National Council of Environmental Legislators caucus. There, what I'm understanding and learning is that we are actually leading the way in Washington State, nationwide in our progress. Is it fast enough? No. But what we really need to do is continue rapid work on looking at energy alternatives. And what's really amazing is that we have some leaders, actually industry leaders, right here in our county that are doing just that. There's a wide variety of things happening right here that you may or may not be aware of. One of the things is, can you imagine this? They're making gasoline out of beef tallow. No kidding. We are looking at sustainable aviation fuel right here in our backyard. We are moving quickly, and we need to continue to do so. We've got a lot of work in building out the grid in this part of the country that we're behind on. That's an issue. So we need to continue doing that. But we also need to continue work on increasing biodiversity, increasing frankly, the number of trees. All of these things work together. Some of the upward growth that we're doing to build up instead of out, concentrating places like Seattle and that metro area, all of those are very thoughtful ways, building out transit and making sure that all of our systems are working together are all moving us forward in the right direction. Thank you.
And Mr.
So our state and our country, first of all, we need to each individually be good stewards of our environment, take care of what we do locally, help our industries do better. The climate pledge that we've done, the thing that gets me all the time, it's for 10 or 15 or 20 years down the road. Pay us now, give us the money, and somewhere down the road you have a benefit. Well, we've heard that since 1960 when we were going to all freeze to death because the climate was going to freeze. Then we heard it again when it got to where it was going to be real warm. We can join together and help build our country and our state and be responsible. As noted, there's a lot of activities in biofuels and that for gasoline. We're also trying to transition everybody to electric cars, so there'll be an interesting switch. We together can work together and make a better community for us all. We just have to get together and do so.
Thank you. And Mr. Pelletti, you first. What specific changes would you support for abortion care in Washington State for both Washington State residents as well as non-residents?
First of all, the states have been given the onus of deciding on what their abortion rights are going to be and how they're going to be pursued. I don't think it's a fairly complex problem to start with, and we need to work through it. But I don't think that's because somebody gets pregnant that abortion is the way to end it. And I'm also in support of, if it's rape or incest or spousal rape, there has to be a window where that person needs to decide whether to keep the baby or not. Now, first of all, that's got to be extremely traumatic for the individual involved. But I also am not in late-term abortions where you have to the last minute you can abort. Washington State, I think, has until a viability. That makes sense. We need to be responsible as to how we treat the unborn. We need to be responsible for helping people make those decisions. And the state can help in that, but it's also a personal issue.
And Ms.
Let me be crystal clear. I trust women with their own bodies. They are the ones who are to make this decision. And I will continually work toward protecting their freedom to make their own medical decisions. I am currently working on multiple bills because we didn't ever think we'd get to this point in Washington State where the voters have been very clear that they support women in their own bodies. But we are at a point where even where the law is silent, we have to proactively work to protect our rights. Currently, I'm working on a bill to protect our right to IVF. This is critically important for many people. Infertility hits everybody. It's not discriminatory. It's something that I experienced. It's personal. It's difficult. And I trust that women and families can make their own decisions. They don't need people like us to do that for them. Nobody wants their politician to make their own medical care decisions. And I'm also working, and I cannot believe I have to say this, to protect access to birth control. But we're there as well. All means of birth control should be available to women, including that bill that I'm working on that says you should never have to ask anybody, including your husband, for permission to do what we would call, tying your tubes or getting snipped informally. Those are decisions people can make for themselves, and I trust that they can do that, and I'll protect that freedom.
Thank you both. And because you've been so straightforward in answering the questions, we have a little bit of time left, and I'm going to give you each 2 minutes to basically make a closing statement. Those things that we didn't ask you about that you think the voters need to hear without me interfering in the process. Mr. Pelletti, why don't you start with that?
Thank you. We have challenges ahead of us. We have abortion issues. We have right to life issues. We have housing issues. The thing of it is, we need to be able to sit down and have a conversation. Over the years, people forgot to talk. And I'd rather sit down with you and have you have the absolute opposite opinion of me, but I want to hear what you have to say. Let's talk it out. If we can agree, we can work on it. And if there's nothing we can change, then that's the end of that conversation. But not the end of the times we get together to talk about it. Washington State's probably one of the best states in the country to come and live in. The national indication was that for seniors, this is one of the prime areas to retire in because of our economy, because of our climate, because of the availability of housing, and they want to come here. I will sit with you. I will talk with you. We will work out the solutions. There's no easy answers to a lot of these. We need to protect the thing, and I just want to be clear. I have 3 kids. I have 11 grandkids. I want to make sure my granddaughters have freedom to go into their bathrooms and be safe, have freedom to go to their schools and be safe, and they ought to be able to play in their sports through all their career without having to compete against a biological male, because they didn't train for 15 years to finally go up against somebody who's superior physically against them. So thank you.
And Mr. Pelletti, I can see your badge, but not everyone can. Where can voters find you if they want to look at your website or to learn more about you or to communicate with you directly?
And I appreciate it. A call is good, an email is good, and we'll respond. It's Pelletti, Pelletti, for house.com. Please send them to me, or it's Pelletti at pellettiforhouse@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Rule, what didn't we ask you? What else should we know about you?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's been my pleasure to represent you in Olympia for the last 4 years, and I'm not finished yet. We have work ahead. It's important work, and we have threats to our own bodily autonomy and to our own freedoms. It will be critically important that we have a voice in Olympia that will be protective. It is no accident that I have support by nearly every organization that gets involved in these sort of political races. And the reason that support is there is because I have an open door. My office in Olympia, I just learned, has the busiest workload of any legislator. We have more appointments, more emails, more phone calls, more in-person meetings, and that's because I will continue to listen and ensure that you're heard, whether we agree or not. I have put forward many propositions for increasing civic health. And in fact, I spent the last year with nearly every entity that came into my office in Olympia, reminding you it's every 15 minutes for days and days and days, listening to folks, but also taking the opportunity in every one of those meetings to remind people of the critical importance of our civic health. We live in this community together. We have to work together. And I look forward to continually representing your voice and protecting your freedoms as we move forward together into the future. Thank you.
And where can the room find you if you want to communicate more, share a thought, or look at your website for additional information?
Thank you for asking. If you're looking for me in the community, you'll see me zipping around from my children's school to my business downtown to community events, and we're likely to run into each other. But I also want to tell you about my website, which is www.votealiciarule.com. I look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you to both of you, and would everybody please join me in a show of thanks? And how about the candidates for the PUD? Yeah. PUD. Ah. I thought the judges wanted to be last. I thought. And gentlemen, I didn't say so before, you want to stay after. As they, well, I'm sure have more questions for you. Oh, this is going to be fun. Gentlemen.
We've decided to stand.
Does somebody have a chair for me? Anyway, thank you both. As you can see, it's Dan Johnson and Atul Deshmane. No, I'm actually just joking, seriously. And this is a nonpartisan race for the Public Utility District. And let's start with Mr. Deshmane. Mr. Deshmane, would you please describe the ways in which you distinguish yourself from your opponent?
Well, I realize that you're voting. It's not a job interview. But if it was a job interview, and if you were hiring me, there's two things you'd look at, I would assume. One of those is this guy even qualified for this job? And secondly, what has he done to demonstrate that he's capable of doing the job and serving the community? So, a little bit about my qualifications. I'm an incumbent. I've been doing it for one term. But before I did that, I ran against somebody who was in that seat for 38 years. And the overwhelming response I got from people after the election was, Atul, we voted for you because you're qualified. And so, well, I still have that. But in addition to that, now I have 6 years of turning input from the community into policy. When I ran, people told me that we got to do something about broadband. And so when I got to the PUD, the staff told me, we're not going to do anything about broadband. And I said, oh, well, now I'm in trouble. What am I going to do? So I sat down with staff, and we spent a lot of time together developing a document, which is a lessons learned document. What did we learn? Why is it that we're cautious about going to broadband? And it was out of that effort that we were able to identify what were things gone wrong in the past and how could we avoid those in a new approach. And that's the approach we took. And so, it takes a lot of work to take an organization from not doing something to doing something. And I love staff, but you got to really work hard to get that kind of a change to happen. So that's just one example. I think I'm out of time. No? Oh.
15 seconds.
Anyway, but that's enough.
No, but thank you. And Mr. Johnson, how would you distinguish yourself from your opponent?
First of all, thanks everybody for coming out on a Wednesday and sharing a lunch with us. I know that we all have busy schedules, and thanks everybody for coming together. I'm Dan Johnson. I'm running for the PUD 2nd District Commissioner position. And for those of you who've never met me, I used to be a business owner in Whatcom County. I used to own Johnson's Towing, so I've got 23 years as an owner-operator. I was also involved in our towing association, and I've done a lot of work down in Olympia through industry that would help out through legislation and building laws that are going to better help the things that I'm interested in. And right now I'm interested in being in the PUD and helping out with our energy problems that we have and forwarding broadband as far as growing it, adding it into places like Point Roberts, into the East County, and getting those things taken care of, getting everybody on the same page with that kind of a resource. I understand budgets from being a business owner. I understand that the PUD does have a fiscal responsibility to manage their funds wisely, and I can definitely look at a budget, look at P&Ls, and see what's going on with our money in that situation. There's a lot of other things that are on the table this go around for what would be the next 6-year cycle, which I'm sure some of the questions will come up with adjudication and what kind of other resources we're looking at as far as energy goes. And those are all things that I want to be a part of moving forward here in Whatcom County. Thank you.
And thank you. And we'll give the next question to you first. And as I asked of the earlier candidates, your specificity, gentlemen, is really appreciated. And let's start with, would you describe your view of the potential opportunity presented by geothermal energy and your level of commitment to pursuing this resource for our community?
One more time.
Sure, happy to.
That's a complex question. I want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly.
I'm happy to. Please describe your view of the potential opportunity presented by geothermal energy and your level of commitment to pursuing this resource for our community.
I think it's important to know that we have a lot of energy resources that are available that we should be pursuing, and not just one specific resource, whether it be geothermal, whether it be nuclear, hydroelectric, or hydrogen. I think that those are all things that we need to be looking at in the PUD. And honestly, I'm up for trying new things and exploring and seeing what's going to work, and then eventually letting the market sort it out as to see what's going to work the best, and moving forward and building the structure around what's going to be the best thing working for our county that's going to fit our needs and fulfill the requirements that our customers have, and that is Whatcom County residents. Thank you.
And Mr. Deshmane.
I remember my first email to the general manager about let's explore geothermal was 2019. And a couple years ago, we started getting involved in it seriously. And I owe my colleague, Commissioner Christine Grant, who just recently left the seat, for her assistance and leadership. And of course, Alex, who's standing up there, also someone who likes to stand, to get support for geothermal in place. And so it's important to say that we're very hopeful. PUD is very hopeful. It's an attractive location because it's near transmission lines for both Seattle City Light and Puget Sound Energy. So you want to generate power where you've got transmission lines, that's a good thing. And in addition to that, the capacity of that resource could be on the order of a couple of 100 megawatts, which is the load, average load for Whatcom County. So it's certainly very hopeful. But like all things, the devil is in the details. So one of the things I'm really glad to be able to do is to be able to bring years and years of experience with project management, working in infrastructure and renewable energy for decades before I became a PUD commissioner, to be able to help the team navigate all of those hurdles, to be able to make sure we do it right. One of the key things is that we've chosen right up front to partner with the Nooksack tribe. Why? Because it is completely beneficial to take advantage of the Nooksack tribe's usual and custom rights and their alliance to be able to develop the project so that it is much more likely to jump through the hurdles, particularly permitting hurdles, that will provide a win-win for multiple governments in our community. So that's a quick summary. I'm very supportive of it, but the devil is in the details.
Thank you both. And Mr. Deshmane, the next question is for you first. The PUD website says that the PUD is involved in local and regional environmental matters, salmon habitat and stream flow restoration, along with utility issues in an effort to better serve everyone in Whatcom County. What does better serve mean, and how would you better serve Whatcom County?
So it's a process of ongoing improvement. And so what does that mean? That means that we obviously have done a lot since my election in 2018 to better serve Whatcom County. But where do we go next? Well, where we go next is to continue to make a dent in the gap that I see. I mean, I'm still getting, when I doorbell for the primary, broadband is the #1 issue. So I'm just going to focus on that in answering this. I am getting person after person. I had almost 1,000 conversations. I might have set a record. I doorbelled 3,000 doors prior to the primary. And the number that came up was broadband. And out of that, many of those people currently are being served. So the PUD is getting resources for the purpose of serving the unserved. But what about the underserved, or the poorly served, or the annoyed and served? And so those categories are things that we have to figure out a way to partner with local government, with the cities and the county. And, we have an infrastructure. We've got telecom providers, and they are serving people. But we have to do something to try to increase the competitiveness of the market. And so there are many possible ways of doing that, but I just had conversations this morning to talk about what can be done with new development so that we have the same kind of open access infrastructure for new development, even in served areas, that will create greater competition. I have this comment I'd like to make. If I'm sitting down with any of you for lunch, I guess we just are sitting there for lunch. But anyway, I don't have to eat your entire lunch to make you nervous about me. I could just take a few things off your plate and you're going to be like, hey, Atul, come on, that's my lunch. So the same analogy applies to what can happen in the private sector. We just need to nibble off once in a while and we'll see a more competitive market. Thank you.
And Mr. Johnson, what does better serve mean?
Could you repeat the whole question? Sorry.
Let me say how happy I am to do that. Truly, the PUD website says that the PUD is involved in local and regional environmental matters, salmon habitat, and stream flow restoration, along with utility issues in an effort to better serve everyone in Whatcom County. How would you what does better serve mean, and how would you better serve Whatcom County?
Thank you very much for repeating that question. Much appreciated. I believe that better serve Whatcom County today is going to be different. In a year ago, it was different. A year from now versus a year ago. It's something that constantly needs to be revisited and readdressed. As far as this moment in time, I do believe that we have the adjudication thing that's on the line right now, and water rights, like Atul was saying, we have the broadband things we need to consider. We have farming and agriculture we have to consider. We have citizens in Point Roberts and our outlying parts of the county that we need to consider. And so being able to provide not just one, but all of the services to all of those outlying areas is crucial, so that we can better serve everybody and meet them at their needs depending on what section they live in. Maybe somebody in the East County is more concerned with broadband, whereas somebody in the North County is more concerned with the agricultural issues. But I think that having that conversation with everybody at the table and getting together so that we can all sort it out is going to be crucial to know how we can meet people at their needs when that need is so broad all across Whatcom County, and to include industry out there at Cherry Point. I mean, there's going to be a lot of different things that are going to come into play here. And to meet them at their needs, we need to sit down with the stakeholders and have those conversations with them. And that's how we better serve them, because we as civil servants need to serve them. And like I said before, is meet them at their needs, find out what exactly their issues and concerns are, and then have that be addressed in that moment, and then work towards that goal so that they can be better served in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And both gentlemen, I'm going to repeat my favorite word, which is specificity. And Mr. Johnson, this question will begin with you. What policies would you support for agriculture, industry, and the community to reduce their water usage? And what opportunities do you see for the creation of a water reservoir to ensure adequate water for the future?
So on February 4th, 2025 at 8:15 in the morning, I would like to attend a meeting. I'm sorry, you were asking for specificities, so the smart alecky part of my brain was kicking off. Thanks for the courtesy laugh from the room. I do appreciate it. One more time with the question. I lost track. Does my time start over?
You're
pausing. Thank you.
What policies would you support for agriculture, industry, and the community to reduce our water usage? And what opportunities do you see for the creation of a water reservoir to ensure adequate water for the future?
I think that's a great question. I think the answer is pretty simple and pretty short. As far as policies go, I would defer back to something my grandmother always said, and that's waste not, want not. And let's really be diligent with the resources we do have and not wasting them, not leaving the water, just leave the spigot running, right? And simple things like that. But as far as agriculturally going, we can't ignore the agricultural needs in Whatcom County, because I do believe, and I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but we're one of the leading berry producers in the country, if I'm accurate. And, that is something we need to not let them go off to the wayside. But on the same hand, we have to also look at the salmon and everything that is wrapped around with the salmon, from Bellingham Bay all the way up to where they go to their spawning grounds, and understanding that process. As far as the upriver reservoirs go, I do like the idea of having a reservoir, and if not 3 reservoirs, because we do have 3 forks. I do know that it's not something that will happen overnight, but being able to get on board with having the lack of a better term, upriver reservoirs up there, we could then create hydroelectric power. We could create some reservoirs that will release water into the summertime and not flood us in the wintertime. And that is something that's crucial that happens along the river.
Thank you. And Mr. Deshmane.
Is Eric Hurst in the house? Eric Hurst? No? So I'm just saying that because he's a citizen who's really helped all of us keep the topic of water use efficiency on our radar. He reaches out to me. The other commissioners are elected officials. He's involved at City Club. He's plugged in a lot of different places, and I just wanted to recognize him for continually talking about water use efficiency. We have a problem, though, and that is that under current Washington state water law, when I save water, I actually relinquish that water, meaning that there's not an incentive to save water if you're a farmer or if you're even a municipality. So the challenge here is, how do we take away that disincentive for water use efficiency? And it's a piece of legislation that I have been interested in, that's been worked on for years and is still not done and hasn't been passed. And the general category of the legislation is what's called foster fix. And you put me by the judges, so naturally I started bugging them to talk about the foster fix. And so anyway, that's a big challenge, but we've got to get it done, because we have to incentivize water use efficiency if we want water use efficiency. Now on storage, I'll jump to that piece. storage is very important, but we need to consider that storage is not just about a reservoir. Storage is about soil practices. Storage is about practices in the near riparian zone and in the riparian zone. So, and it includes man-made storage. And so the PUD actually commissioned a study with the county to look at that. And I'm out of time.
So, but you'll get the first chance at the next question, which is, as I read to you earlier, the PUD mission, in part, is to protect stream flow and salmon habitat. What policies do you support to accomplish this part of your mission?
So to protect stream flow, the vehicle we have is what's called the Watershed Management Board. It is an entity that was created in partnership with the sovereign tribal nations, all the Whatcom County, City of Bellingham, the PUD, and Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I'm sure I'm missing somebody, ecology. But anyway, the point is that this entity manages a work plan that's been underway for years and years and continues to receive the support of the community, as well as the state legislature, to fund projects to improve and address habitat, water quality, water quantity, and we intend to continue to do that.
Thank you. And Mr. Johnson, would you like the question? Part of the PUD's mission is to protect stream flow and salmon habitat. What policies do you support to accomplish this mission?
As I've said before, I do support stakeholders and the meetings, and I think Atul was saying just a moment ago that there is a group that does meet. I would definitely love to be a part of that meeting and have the conversations about it and see exactly, again, meet them at their needs and what their concerns are at this, because I'm diving in fresh into this. But as far as the flow goes, and again, the riparian was discussed, and for those of you, I had to look it up, but the riparian, of course, talks about the bank along the rivers. And if we can't control the flow better than we are now, then the riparian, like in November 2021, ends up out in Bellingham Bay due to all of the flooding issues that we have, and we have half the North County underwater. So being able to use reservoirs upstream to control it not only in the winter, but then in the summertime, so we don't look at loss of water flow in the summertime, which is then going to affect everybody's water, to include the agricultural, to include the natural habitat of the rivers. If we don't do something about that and start that process right now, we're going to find ourselves behind the 8 ball 20, 30, 40 years from now, when it's going to be past a point of no return and we have done nothing to preserve it. So whether it's talking about reservoirs up top, above, and outside of the spawning zones, or if it's talking about helping the flow of the river down from, say, Deming West, and so that you don't lose the integrity of the river, but you can also say get some things like the gravel out of the river that can be used also locally. And our pits are not going to live forever. They have a finite amount of gravel. I just think we have a lot of resources that are available to us in the county that we're not currently using and exploring.
Thank you. And Mr. Johnson, this question is for you first. What specific strategies in Whatcom County's climate action plan do you plan to pursue to better ready Whatcom County's response to the effects of climate change and to strengthen our climate resiliency?
Boy, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but I do think that, I mean, first of all, as far as climate change goes, the earth is it's alive, it's a living being, and climate change is something, the earth goes through phases, and we're going through a phase right now. And as a Marine, one of the things we always used to say was adapt, overcome, and improvise. And one of the things we need to do is look at the earth and see, okay, what are the changes that are taking place right now? And what can we do to adapt, overcome, and improvise? Because we have an infrastructure set here that is Whatcom County that we need to make sure that we're adjusting on the fly and moving with those changes, whether it's, again, the reservoirs up high, whether it's the efficiency and the uses of water so that we're not wasting it, whether it's maintaining those riverbeds and the riparians so that we're securing natural habitat, but all the while still being able to have our agricultural needs met, and also not, for lack of a better term, short sticking Cherry Point out there, because they are one of the customers of the PUD as well. And we don't want to lose anybody in this process. And we want to make sure that while we respect the changes that are going on, we have to still maintain the ability to shift on the fly and move with them and make necessary policy as it's necessary in the moment at the time. Thank you.
And Mr. Deshmane, do you need the question again, or?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
The Whatcom County Climate Impact Advisory Group, I believe.
The Climate Action Plan.
Okay. I was fortunate enough to be able to contribute to the writing of that document, and there's a few things that I'd like to share. First is that actually in the state energy strategy and in the county's action plan, there's specific language about the importance of broadband, because it actually is an important instrument to reduce our reliance on driving everywhere. It's number one or number two in the state energy strategy as a strategy to reduce our energy consumption and climate impact. So, of course, I plan to continue to do that. The climate action plan also addresses energy supply. Specifically, it asks for the PUD to investigate municipalization and renewable energy supplies. Well, we've checked. We did both of those things in the last couple of years. But we need to keep at it. And of course, as I said, the devil is in the details. The climate action plan also talks about water. And what I really appreciate about the county's plan is that it does a good job of addressing water with climate, water with CO2. And I think this is an evolution we have to take in our way we look at climate policy. It's important to obviously minimize our causes of climate change, but we need to recognize that it's happening. So it's extremely important for us as a community to focus on resilience. And resilience means taking care of our water. So everything else we've already talked about, I've had the chance to answer about water-related policy as also part of the climate action plan.
Well, join me, please, in thanking these two candidates for sharing their time with us today. No, you used your time well. Okay.
Thank you.
And please feel free to sit down. This is last, but it is not least at all. For those of you who don't know, I'm a retired attorney, and it is my particular pleasure to welcome these two candidates for the Washington State Supreme Court. This, like the PUD, is a nonpartisan race, and the candidates are Sal Mungia. Did I say that correctly? Mungia, and I'll try to get that right, and Dave Larson. I think it's particularly hard to be an educated voter and to vote on judges for anyone, including people who have been involved in the legal system. How do we know about them? And what qualities are we looking for to elect them? There are some limitations on what we can do here today, and it is set in terms of the Code of Judicial Conduct and the ethical rules that are specific to candidates for judicial positions, which is that they cannot speak to issues that might come before them when they sit on the bench. They can't talk about how they might rule, or what about cases that might come to them if they were elected and they were seated on the court. So we have tailored our questions today specifically so that these candidates can be within the ethical rules that govern their candidacy, but also will hopefully shed some light on them as candidates for the highest court in the state of Washington. It's important to know that the state Supreme Court doesn't take testimony. They are instead reviewing a record created in the courts below, and they are also often reviewing the decisions of the appellate court. So this is a very different job than that of the Whatcom County Superior Court, the Bellingham Municipal Court, and even the Court of Appeals. It is a privilege and a pleasure to have these candidates here with us today. And let's start as I did with the other candidates, and I'll start with you. Say it for me again. Mr. Mungia. Sal. I could get it right. How would you distinguish yourself from your opponent?
Great. Thanks, Jill. So 3 things I want to tell you that may distinguish myself from Dave Larson. 1, who I am. 2, what I've done in my 40 years of being a lawyer. And 3, how I've been recognized. So 1, who am I? I am the son of immigrants. My dad came from Mexico. My mom came from Japan. And I saw how they were mistreated when I was growing up. I was born in 1959. And let me tell you, 1960s, this was not a culture of inclusion, right? Racism was in your face. And I saw particularly how my mom was treated. I mean, she had a heavy Japanese accent. We didn't have any money, and our skin color was different. And I'll never forget that look of hurt and anger in her face when she knew she was being taken advantage of, and there was nothing she could do about it. And starting in 2nd grade, I knew what I was going to be when I grew up, because I'd walk home from school and I'd watch this show called Perry Mason. And I saw that Perry could stick up for others, and I said, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to be, and that's what I did. I went straight through undergrad, straight through law school, returned to Tacoma. I'm a Tacoma boy, where I've been practicing law for the last 40 years, 38 of those years in private practice. So let me tell you what I've been doing in private practice. Civil trial and appellate work. I have argued appeals at every level of state and federal appellate courts. I've been recognized by Best Lawyers in America as a, quote, Best Lawyers in Appellate Practice since 2011, recognized by Washington Law and Politics since 2008 as a super lawyer. I'm a member of a couple of invitation-only legal societies because of the work I've done. And what I love about this is that I'm pretty well known throughout the state or legal community. And because of that, I want to tell you one more thing. 130 judges, both active and retired, including 8 of the current state Supreme Court justices, have endorsed me based upon my work. So that's a little bit that may distinguish me.
And, sir, Mr. Larson.
Hi, I'm Judge Dave Larson. Thank you for having this. This is wonderful. It's an opportunity for people to learn more about judicial candidates, because it's hard to vote for judicial candidates. Sal and I are a lot alike. I came from a working class family. My dad was a mechanic for Northwest Airlines, which is also called No Work Airline because it was always on strike. The sense of injustice I had, some same kind of inspiration Sal had for different reasons, was seeing my dad unemployed for 6 months, us selling firewood and building and doing patios and sidewalks for money to make the house payment, while Northwest Airlines made $46 million because of the mutual aid pact, that where other airlines are paying them when they're on strike. Those kind of things, those experiences where you're on food stamps, you actually experience those things firsthand. It gives you a taste of what you have to face when you're facing people in court. I'm running for the position. I'm not running against Sal. Okay, we've known each other for years. The thing that distinguishes me, I've been a trial judge for 16 years. In the NFL, they have referees doing instant replay. They don't have lawyers doing, or have players doing instant replay. So when you're looking at what a judge has done, that experience on the bench as a trial judge is absolutely crucial. In fact, some of my colleagues almost every other year have to go down to the legislature to fix mistakes the Supreme Court makes because they're not familiar with the nuances that happen in the trial courts from a trial court judge's standpoint. And that's very important. The thing is that Sal's got a lot of great endorsements, and I envy him for it. I'm here for the voiceless. I became what I did. I was a lawyer at a large law firm, AV rated. I was a super lawyer in 2000, right?
AB rated, which is a top rating by your peers. I was president of the Federal Way School Board, and our court was in trouble. Our city manager asked me to come over there. 16 years now, it's one of the most purpose-driven things I've done. One of the things I've noticed is the issues that happen in the trial courts. The Supreme Court's silent as we struggle in the trial courts to try to deal with addiction, mental illness, and it's very important that we have somebody on the bench that cares about that.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Larson, this question is for you first. Who is the judge that you most admire and why?
Well, he's retired now, but Justice Gary Alexander, he was the Chief Justice when I became a judge. And I think he has that kind of, what we need in the judiciary are people that are steady. One of the things I say, we just need to make the judiciary boring and dependable again. If you look at the U.S. Supreme Court, liberals hate it. You look at the state Supreme Court, conservatives hate it. Don't think it's fair on either end. What we need is we need to get the politics out of the judiciary. And he was just one of those people that just towed the line. And that's the kind of judge I want to be, where it's about principles, not about politics, where the rules apply the same regardless of partisanship. And what's happened in the trial courts over the last few years, it's happened at the U.S. level, where we've been hijacked by politics. And we need enough judges to stand up and say, no, we're not going to be influenced by politics anymore. We're going to decide the law and the Constitution the way it's written, and we're not going to be influenced by it. Politics gets foisted on us in a lot of cases. Just for example, if there's a decision made in the federal courts, they always say which president appointed that particular judge to try to put a little taint on that decision based on politics. And we as a judiciary have to fight back against that, to reassert ourselves, to have public trust and confidence. So when a litigation gets to the courts, people have a sigh of relief instead of, if they feel they're on the opposite end of the politics, they don't have a chance. And that's where we need to go as a judiciary. And Gary Alexander was that type of person that did that kept us in line, kept us on a path where it was about the law and the Constitution. And I wish he was back as Chief Justice. Now, nothing against Steve Gonzalez, but he's the type of guy that we need right now in the judiciary, and we need to call him. Thank you.
And Mr. Mungia.
Oh, but just call me Sal. But you'll really know Sal.
Out?
Yeah, just Sal.
Who is the judge that you most admire and why?
I'm going to pick three, all right? Because I don't like being constrained. One is Thurgood Marshall. That guy spent his legal career as a lawyer fighting for civil rights. He fought for those who definitely did not have a voice. He made huge changes, very successful before the U.S. Supreme Court. Then, of course, he went to the U.S. Supreme Court where he championed civil rights through his opinion. So that's one. Two, William O. Douglas, a son of Washington State, right? The guy was brilliant. I mean, these guys were all brilliant. These all three. But what did he do? He, again, found in legal doctrine the right of privacy within the federal Constitution, which formed the basis of Griswold versus Connecticut, which ensured access to contraceptives. But it was in my lifetime that, in fact, there were states where it was illegal, and it was the Griswold case which made it legal, which was the foundation for Roe versus Wade. The guy was amazing, right? And plus, he was just cool. He's this outdoorsman from Yakima, did all these cool things. So that's another reason why he's one of my heroes. Three, on the state level, and he's completely different than I am. And that's one of the reasons that he's one of my heroes, Bob Utter. Does anybody remember Justice Bob Utter? Okay, he came from a different kind of school of thought that I did, but here's why I love that guy. I clerked on the state Supreme Court for Justice Dorr when Justice Utter was there. Always admired him. But he stood up against the people who supported him and said, the death penalty within the state isn't working, and it isn't right, and it's unconstitutional, way before anybody else did. And he really took a hard stance about that. And I love people who will take hard stances and take the political heat for standing up for their values. They just do.
So, Sal, I can learn. You'll begin with this question. Please provide us with an example of a case that you handled as an attorney where you think justice either was or was not well served, and why.
People often ask me, what's the best case you ever had? I've handled, huge cases, air crash cases. I've argued before the U.S. Supreme Court. The best case I ever had was over less than $2,000. Two different families who had had their security deposits for rent wrongfully withheld by a landlord in Tacoma who'd been doing this for years. And no one ever did anything about it. I was approached by civil legal aid. They're overworked. The prosecutor's office wouldn't do anything about it because we're talking about less than $2,000. And I was asked by Puget Sound Legal Assistance Foundation, would I take on this case? And of course I said yes, because that's why I became a lawyer, right? To speak up for those who don't have a voice, just like my mom. People who got taken advantage of, and there's nothing they can do. I'm gonna give you the short version of this. I'm always a nice guy. I wrote a letter to him, said, look, I understand that you've got $2,000, $1,000 here, $1,000 in this family. Would you please return it? And if I'm wrong, let me know. No answer. So we filed suit, took him to court, asked for permanent injunctive relief, gave him a chance to settle. He didn't take it, went to trial. I'll never forget this because we're trying to figure out, because we also brought an action under the Consumer Protection Act. And I was asking my paralegal, how much do we ask for emotional distress? And if I had more time, I would tell you about the emotional stress. I will tell you this, the line between having a home and not having a home for so many people is razor thin. You don't have your security deposit, you don't have a home. They didn't have their security deposit. So this a huge emotional distress. My paralegal goes, ask for $100,000. I said, $100,000, Robin, you're crazy. She said, no, ask for it. Ask for it. We got it. Over $100,000 for less than $2,000 withholding. And the short thing of this, we put him out of business. He was never able to do what he'd been doing for years. Best case ever.
So to keep things even, Dave.
That's fine. Some people call me Judge, but Dave is fine.
If it's not.
That's okay. No, Dave is the best compliment I ever had is that I don't act like a judge. So that's not. I think that more formality is important because the judiciary is too mysterious, and we need to remove that. We need to be more with people. Monday I had 74 cases that I heard. Yesterday I had 58 cases I heard. So every day I see justice and injustice, right? And the injustice right now that I see is a fragmented system that keeps passing people back and forth. And I've been recognized nationally and statewide for my solutions. I've made some progress in the legislature on some of them. But I'm going to talk about the most important case I ever handled and how it changed my entire life and what I did. It was a wrongful death case. I was hired by insurance companies to defend people in the first part of my career. I ended up doing national counsel work, handled 15,000 cases nationwide, and very complex stuff before I became a judge. But this particular case, my client killed a 12-year-old kid on a bike, and it was an accident, and it was unavoidable from my client's standpoint. State Patrol investigation said it was completely unavoidable. So there's no liability for my client, but a 12-year-old child died, right? The parents wanted the policy limits of $100,000 plus my client's assets, and the insurance company was offering $40,000. Okay, we went to mediation, and I didn't think to ask this because I was this hard-charging lawyer, very successful in court, right? I didn't think to ask it, but the plaintiff, the mother, said she didn't feel that my client respected her son's death. That's why she's angry. My client piped up and said, actually, I wanted to talk to you, but the school chaplain recommended against it. I went to the funeral and stood in the back, and I planted 2 trees at your son's school in honor of your son. There wasn't a dry eye in the house, including me, and the plaintiff settled for the $40,000. All she wanted was dignity and respect. And the system does not do that. It creates, in a lot of cases, more problems. That was 1996, and I've been on a quest ever since to change the system. And I will not give up till we do, till we make it a system that values people over process, not process over people.
So, Dave, we'll begin with you with the next question. And please provide us your view of the balance between regulations that purport to protect consumers and the environment versus the needs of commerce and the economy.
It's one of those questions where you get on some slippery ground, but I'll talk about it in terms of regulations the way they should be. We have checks and balances, and I've been given awards for my civics education. I'm very involved in that. You can look on my website to see my involvement. But it's very important about checks and balances. One of the checks and balances is that regulations cannot be created without legislative authority. there has to be some legislation that grants authority to a regulatory body to then make regulations. And that's part of the checks and balances. And so the regulations have to be within the scope of those particular statutes. And if we don't like the fact that it can't be regulated like we do, we go back to the legislature to amend those statutes to give broader authority to the executive branch. It's called an unconstitutional delegation of legislative authority. If the legislature just says, hey, you go figure it out, and then the executive branch just does anything they want. But it's intended to check power, because power, if it's left unchecked, is always abused. And and abuse of power is wrong regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on, right? And so when it comes to regulations, the courts would be involved in interpreting whether or not that the regulatory body went beyond the scope. And so in terms of in the policy issue of whether there should be or shouldn't be, the judges should not be involved in that. The policy issue, we are devoid of that. Where you made a decision, is it enforceable under the law and under the regulation that you enforce? And the political issues behind it, we need to be distant from. And one thing about a judge, you have to be in love with the fact that nobody cares what your opinion is other than the law and the Constitution. And that's where we have to go. Thank you.
And Sal.
So let me take you to the 20,000 foot level where the whole kind of conflict begins between regulations and your use of property. It's really the Fifth Amendment taking issue. So everybody knows that if the government comes in and takes your property, they have to pay fair and just compensation. The question is, what kind of restrictions can the government put on either the property or the way you run your business that in fact is a taking of those rights to the extent where fair and just compensation have to be paid? That's the kind of the crux of it. Luckily, I've represented, not the government, I've represented property owners and business owners in this very quest where, how much restrictions can you have? And there's no one set answer. And I will agree with Dave, no one cares about my opinion, and no one should. You don't put your opinion on these things. As a lawyer, I represent my clients. As a judge, you follow what the law says you have to do. I'll just give you one example, though. I've represented developers. They developed condos at the beginning. That's what it was permitted for. But the condo market went down, so they're going to rent those units. And the city of Tacoma said, no, you can't rent those units. That was the agreement. But that's actually unconstitutional because they're treating renters and owners differently. So I had to bring a lawsuit in Pierce County Superior Court over that constitutional issue, which we prevailed upon because that was something that the government is not allowed to do. Oversteps the bounds of what the Constitution allows. So there's no one kind of answer to that, and it's very nuanced depending on the situation. I will agree, as a judge, you have to do what the law tells you to do. It's not what you want to see done.
So, Sal, we'll begin with you. At times, there can be a disconnect between law and justice.
No. Jill, tell me it's not true.
Sometimes. If elected and you are presented with a case where there is a conflict between law and justice, how would you want this conflict to be resolved?
I think I hear my mom calling me now. I'm going to have to go. So that's a great question. And I will just give you, I want to make sure you understand my position clearly is judges can't do just what they think is just. You don't want laws changing, decisions changing just because the makeup of the court changes, right? Precedent has to be followed. There has to be reliability and predictability within the law, or respect for the law goes down. So when you say, you come across a question where the law tells you have to do one thing, but your sense of justice tells you another. We don't make the laws, right? Judges don't make the laws. The Constitution is there. Legislative, you make the laws. Unless they are unconstitutional, it's our job to make sure that those laws are enforced. So whether I'll keep on repeating this, whether we like something or not, we're going to have to follow that law. The one exception, I'll make sure so you all know where I'm coming from, as far as precedent. If that precedent is set upon just really faulty premises, such as sexism, homophobia, racism, then it is not entitled to that same respect. But you really do have to respect precedent.
And Dave.
The the question just went out of my mind. I was repeating in my head over and over again. Go ahead.
At times. At times.
I got it. Okay. I remember it. Just that little trigger. And by the way, as former trial lawyers, we will probably have a tendency to walk around too. So, like closing.
I know what you mean.
There you go. But yeah, there are times. And so somebody asked me one time, have you ever run across a situation you don't agree with the law? And I said, every day, right? But you have to enforce it the way it's written. So one of the things the Supreme Court's done, and I think it's completely acceptable, is you apply the law the way it's written. And you might have some editorial comments that kind of maybe are intended to inspire a change. The Supreme Court did that in Anderson versus King County, where they said there isn't in Washington State, they said there isn't a constitutional right to same-sex marriage, but they wrote their editorial comments were such that it inspired the legislature to have a referendum that then was passed by the people, legalizing same-sex marriage. That's an example of where they felt there was an injustice. They followed what they thought the law was, but still made a comment that allowed for some change. And so, and there's a statute that the Supreme Court's supposed to every year report on statutes that might be out of date or might be improper or might be unfair. And I'm not sure if that, I haven't looked at the report recently, but that's another opportunity that statutorily the Supreme Court has to kind of comment on the efficacy of different statutory provisions that might create injustice. And there is a difference in life, and I try to explain this to people because there's a difference between what might be legal and what might be right? And what I try to taught my sons and everybody else who listen, and even people in court, is that you always want to do what's right, even if it's legal to do something else, you want to do what's right. And I think that the courts also need to inspire that kind of ethic in our communities too, and that we'd see a lot of change if the courts became kind of that beacon for us.
So, gentlemen, we have just a little bit of a cushion left in terms of our time. And I'm going to give you each 1 minute to say, no, you can do
We
it.
get paid by the word.
You can do it. 1 minute to say, to answer whatever you think that this, or tell us what you think the room needs to know about you that we didn't ask you. And starting with you, Dave, what else should we know? And also your website. And I forgot to ask these gentlemen, their website will come back. Please.
Larson, larsonforwa.org. So larsonforwa.org. Okay. I think it's why I'm running. Why I won't give up. It goes back to that case I talked about. I was one of the things that happened. We've gone more and more to rules, and we get away from the merits, right? One of the cases that kind of prompted me was I had a witness list due under this new rules, the rules they had back then. So I faxed it to the other lawyer. Next day I got an objection. So I looked at because I didn't serve him. So I looked at the rule and it says exchange. So I became a lawyer to argue about what the definition of exchange was. I thought we were supposed to deal with the merits. But the point is the Supreme Court decides cases, but it's also the proud ship for the court system. It creates rules for the courts. And the direction that we head is dictated by our rules. Because judges have to follow rules, lawyers have to follow rules. And there's things we could do with rules that encourage, especially in the area of family law and criminal law, more therapeutic approaches.
Thank you so much. And Sal?
Jill, I know your question is, so Sal, what have you done for those who couldn't speak up for themselves? I've represented people incarcerated in Pierce County Jail in a federal class action lawsuit. I just got done action against King County over the King County Jail. We just settled it a few months ago. I've represented people at the Northwest Detention Center over their First Amendment protections, because they are protected by the Constitution, to engage in a hunger strike in a federal district court action the first time they did that. Because let me tell you, people who don't have a voice, all of those I just named don't have a voice, together with the people, the individuals, and the families that I've represented for such little money. And I think that's the reason, I've got Governor Inslee's endorsement, Bob Ferguson's endorsement, federal, state labor council's endorsement, because they know my values and how much protecting liberties and furthering justice means to me in my career.
And your website?
www.salforjustice.com.
Let me, first of all, thank both of these wonderful candidates for being here. Thank you. And your website?
Oh. I don't have a website, but you can email me if you have questions at danjohnsonsenior@comcast.net, and senior is SR. So thank you.
And Atul?
My website is voteatul.com, and you can see my endorsements there too, because I didn't get to talk about them.
I want to thank everybody who came today. We're going to have this much fun and more next month on the fourth Wednesday, and then in October on the 16th. We count on you all being here, and I would again to thank our candidates. So join me, please.